Everyone thought Neca was the most gifted hairstylist in the whole neighborhood, until one quiet afternoon one tiny mistake exposed the dark secret she had been hiding for months. Customers began collapsing, whispers turned into rumors, and the truth she tried so hard to bury finally exploded. This is the shocking story of how greed almost destroyed everything she built, and the long, painful journey she took to earn back the trust she shattered. So grab your popcorn, sit back, and get ready for one of the most powerful stories you've ever heard. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button, turn on the notification bell to support more inspiring stories like this one.
Subscribe for more content.
The morning sun rose gently over the small town of Oregon, casting soft golden light across the dusty streets. Children were already outside, running barefoot, laughing, chasing the morning breeze. Traders were arranging their goods on wooden tables, preparing for another long day. But somewhere inside a tiny zinc-roofed house at the end of Olufemi Street, a different kind of morning was unfolding. 9-year-old Adaura sat quietly at the edge of her bamboo bed, her small hands trembling as she tied the rope handle of the tray she carried every day. On the tray were oranges, groundnuts, and small sachets of pure water. It was the same routine, day after day. She had barely wiped sleep from her eyes when her stepmother, Mama Kike, stormed into the room. "Ada, are you still sitting? Lazy girl," her stepmother barked. I just woke up," Adaura whispered. "You think food will cook itself? You think money will fall from the sky?" Mama Kike hissed. "Stand up and start going. You must finish selling everything today. If you come back with unsold goods again, you will sleep outside." Adaura swallowed her tears. She wanted to speak, to complain, to tell someone how much it hurt, but there was no one to listen. Ever since her mother died, her father had become quiet, tired, almost invisible. He no longer protected her. He no longer fought for her. He simply sat in silence, watching life pass by. So Adaura carried the tray, placed it gently on her head, and stepped into the wide, noisy world outside. But today, something was different. From the moment she stepped into the main road, she noticed unusual noise coming from the town square. People were rushing there, shouting, laughing, clapping. Even drivers parked their cars just to see what was going on. Adaura's curiosity grew stronger with each step. At the center of the crowd was a large gated hall, decorated with banners, lights, and cameras. A huge sign read, "Oregon University Convocation Ceremony Best Graduating Student Award." The crowd inside roared like thunder. The applause was deafening. Camera flashes lit up the hall like stars in the night sky. Adaura tiptoed, trying to see what was happening. And then the announcer's voice boomed. "Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of this year's Best Graduating Student Award is..." The hall exploded in excitement. Adaura's heart beat fast. She had no idea that what she was about to witness would change her life forever. Her destiny was standing inside that hall, and neither she nor her wicked stepmother knew it yet. Before Neca owned her small wooden salon, her life was much harder. She had spent 4 long years as an apprentice under Madame Clara, one of the most popular stylists in the area. Everyone praised Madame Clara's work. Her clients swore she had magic hands. But Neca learned very little from her. Madame Clara never trusted her with real customers. Her days were filled with sweeping the salon floor, washing hair, running errands, and cleaning brushes. Neca watched patiently as other apprentices, many younger than she was, braided and styled paying customers, earning small amounts of money on weekends. Each time Neca tried to get closer to observe or practice, Madame Clara would shout, "You are not ready. If I let you, you will spoil someone's hair." Neca wanted to cry. She wanted to shout, but she did neither. She believed that if she persevered, one day she would become a professional stylist and help her family. She had to. Her mother sold a small car by the roadside to feed them. Her younger brother often fell sick and needed medicine, and sometimes they slept without food. Complaining was not an option. Then, during one particularly rainy season, Madame Clara fell seriously ill. The salon closed for 2 months, and none of the apprentices were paid. Neca tried helping her mother at the local Akara stall, but the money wasn't enough. She sat outside at night, staring at the rain-soaked streets, tears rolling down her cheeks. She questioned everything. Had she wasted her time? Would Madame Clara ever certify her, let her earn her own clients, or even trust her to work independently? A neighbor, noticing her struggle, gave her advice that would change the course of her life. If you are waiting for Madame to settle you, you may wait tired. If you know you can do this work, start small. Nobody starts big. Those words lingered in Neca's mind all night. She could not stop thinking. The next week, she gathered her tiny savings and rented a small wooden shop along a busy street. She cleaned it meticulously, arranged a small mirror, a plastic chair, and a stool. She borrowed a dryer and bought basic hair products. Nothing was perfect, but it was hers. With trembling hands, she hung a small handwritten sign outside. Neca Hair Palace, neat and affordable. Inside, the air smelled faintly of hair cream and hope. Neca told herself firmly, "I will do everything to make this work." She did not yet know that the choices she would soon make to survive would lead her down a path she never imagined, testing her ethics, courage, and the very heart of who she was. The first morning in Neca Hair Palace was quiet but filled with hope. Neca arrived early, even before the sun fully rose, sweeping the wooden floor, dusting the small mirror, and arranging her limited products neatly on the shelf. Every corner of the little shop smelled faintly of hair cream and disinfectant. She had no idea how many customers would come, or if anyone would even notice her tiny salon along the busy street. By mid-morning, the first few visitors trickled in. They were mostly neighbors and church members, people who had heard of Neca's skills and wanted to support her new business. A lady requested simple cornrows, another wanted to loosen her old braids, and a young girl wanted a neat weaving style. Neca handled them all gently, carefully, with the patience she had always dreamed of showing when she was still an apprentice. "Nec, you have such soft hands." "You are very good," one woman said, smiling in the mirror. "I will definitely come back. This is so neat." "Let me take a picture," another exclaimed, snapping a photo for her social media. Even someone promised to bring her sister the next weekend. Neca's heart swelled with warmth. For the first time, she felt that the years of waiting, the hunger, and the hard work had been worth it. She believed she was finally stepping into her future. But 3 weeks passed, and the customers never returned. Not one familiar face walked into her salon again. Neca waited patiently, sometimes from morning until night, wondering if perhaps they were busy or would come back when their hair grew messy. She held on to hope. Yet as she saw them outside in the streets, at the market or at church, they greeted her warmly, praising her work. "My hair is still very neat. I am still enjoying it. Oh, it hasn't gotten rough at all. You did a good job." Some even added proudly, "It's almost 1 month, and I haven't had to redo it." While these words were meant as compliments, to Neca they became a problem. People loved her work so much that they had no reason to return soon. Some came only once in a month, others after 3 or more weeks. Her hands were talented, but her shop was not growing. Reality pressed heavily on her chest. Rent needed to be paid. Supplies ran out quickly. Transport and food money were rising. Her mother and sick brother depended on her. There was no side income, no sponsor, no safety net. Neca tried lowering her prices to attract more frequent clients and even offered free hair washing for return customers, but it didn't help. People simply did not return fast enough. One rainy evening, she sat alone, her head resting against the small mirror table. Fear, for the first time, gripped her heart. Could talent alone save her? Could her little shop survive? The question lingered, heavy and suffocating. Neca sat alone that rainy evening, staring at the small wooden mirror in her little salon. The sound of raindrops tapping against the tin roof matched the rhythm of her anxious heart. Her hands, which had once been praised as soft and skillful, now felt powerless. Despite the glowing compliments of her first customers, none had returned. Her small savings were dwindling, her shop rent loomed over her, and every day brought the same gnawing fear. What if my dream fails? For months, she had believed talent alone could carry her forward. She remembered the days under Madame Clara, watching the older apprentices braid hair with ease, earning money, buying new clothes, and even smartphones, while she only swept floors and washed hair. Back then, she had convinced herself that perseverance would pay off eventually. But now, standing alone in the quiet, dimly lit salon, she questioned everything. Her thoughts wandered to her family. Her mother worked tirelessly at the roadside akara stall. Her younger brother often fell sick, and there were nights they went to bed hungry. Neca had never complained, never shirked responsibility. She had believed patience and honesty were enough to build a future. Yet here she was, watching her small investment slowly slip through her fingers, powerless to stop it. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer, asking for guidance. Then she remembered something her aunt, Auntie Rita, had once told her in the market. Repeat customers are the secret to survival. Neca repeated the words softly to herself. Repeat customers, repeat customers. But the meaning eluded her. She didn't fully understand what Auntie Rita meant. She had thought that if her work was good, people would naturally return. Yet reality was proving otherwise. She could braid perfectly, yet her customers would not come back until their hair became rough or uncomfortable. Pacing the small shop, she realized that waiting for customers to return on their own would not solve her problem. The bills kept coming and she was running out of options. Fear and desperation began to mingle with her thoughts. For the first time, a dangerous idea crept into her mind, not born from malice, but from the urgent need to survive. She remembered the conversation she overheard in the beauty supply store, stylists boasting that their clients returned quickly because their braids did not last. Neca paused, heart hammering. Could she do something to make her customers return faster? Could she find a way to keep her business alive, even if it meant bending the rules she had always believed in? That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wrestling with a choice that could either save her salon or destroy everything she held dear. The next week, Neca could hardly focus on anything else. Her little salon, once filled with hope, now felt like a ticking time bomb. She watched as her empty chairs stared back at her, silent witnesses to her fear. Every rustle of the street outside, every passerby who glanced at her shop without entering, seemed to taunt her. The bills stacked on the table like silent threats, and her mother's worried glances at home made her chest tighten. Neca realized that talent alone would not pay rent, buy products, or provide for her family. She needed customers, repeat customers, and she needed them fast. She remembered the words from the other stylists she overheard in the beauty supply store. Some stylist clients came back quickly because their hair didn't last. The thought lingered in her mind like a dangerous spark. Could she somehow make her clients return sooner? Could she create a situation where her customers felt compelled to come back again and again? Neca shook her head. No, she whispered to herself. I won't hurt anyone. That's wrong. But the pressure of survival pressed down harder than her conscience. Her stomach tightened at the thought of failing, of being forced to close the shop, of watching her family suffer. She had spent years preparing for this moment, and now, without enough income, everything seemed about to crumble. For 2 quiet days she paced her small shop, staring at her nearly empty shelves, checking the rent reminder again and again, thinking about her options. She remembered a lesson from Madame Clara, how her former mentor was careful with chemicals, and always avoided anything that could irritate the scalp. That memory struck Neca like a faint beacon. Perhaps there was a way to carefully use her knowledge of hair care to influence how fast customers returned, without causing real, lasting harm. On the 3rd day, after only one paying customer and a growing panic, Neca made a decision. She walked to the market, her hand shaking slightly, and bought a small jar of strong hair relaxer. She told herself she wouldn't misuse it. She would only use a tiny amount, enough to make hair slightly uncomfortable, enough that people would need a redo sooner, but never to cause permanent damage. That night, sitting alone in her dimly lit shop, Neca mixed a very small portion of the relaxer with her regular hair cream. She transferred the mixture into a tiny, unlabeled container, hiding it carefully in her drawer. Her heart pounded as she thought of the ethical line she was about to cross. It's just survival, she reasoned. I am only trying to keep my shop alive. I am not hurting anyone permanently. Little did Neca know, this first small compromise would open a door she was not ready to close, setting her on a path that would change her life and the lives of her customers forever. The next morning, Neca's hands trembled slightly as she prepared for her first customer of the day. She had rehearsed her routine countless times in her mind, imagining that everything would go smoothly. Her heart beat faster than usual as the door creaked open, and a familiar neighbor stepped inside. The woman greeted her warmly, unaware of the secret plan Neca carried in her drawer. Neca smiled, masking her anxiety. Good morning. Have a seat. Let's get your hair done. she said, her voice steady, betraying none of the storm inside her mind. She moved through her usual motions, combing, sectioning, and braiding with gentle, precise hands. Everything was perfect on the surface. Then, at the very end, she subtly applied a tiny amount of her new mixture to the scalp and edges, careful not to overdo it. The woman left happy, praising the neatness of her braids. For Neca, relief was immediate. She had successfully completed her first test without immediate consequences. Yet anxiety lingered. Would the small relaxer irritate the scalp too much? Would the client return sooner, as Neca intended? Or would something go horribly wrong? She sat back, heart pounding, trying to calm herself. 3 days later, the first reaction came. She heard her name shouted from outside. "Auntie Neca, please help me." The neighbor's voice trembled slightly, half complaint, half desperation. Neca rushed out and guided her inside. The scalp was itchy, but nothing dangerous. Neca soothed the woman, carefully washing and massaging the affected areas. The client paid again, satisfied with Neca's gentle care, and left promising to return. Over the next week, a pattern emerged. More customers returned earlier than usual, scratching and complaining softly, seeking relief for the itching and mild discomfort. Neca greeted them with her usual calm smile, acting concerned and caring. Each customer left satisfied, paying promptly, and sometimes even giving a little extra out of gratitude. Slowly, her once empty chairs began filling. Within 3 weeks, her little shop, which had been quiet and lonely, was now bustling. Women came early, some returning in the morning, others rushing in during lunch breaks. Neca worked tirelessly, yet she felt a strange sense of unease. The plan was working, her business was alive, but a part of her wondered how far she could safely go before crossing a line she could never come back from. For the first time, Neca tasted both the sweetness of survival and subtle bitterness of compromise. She had learned a lesson she did not fully understand yet. Sometimes the path to success is not as simple as talent and patience. But she pushed that thought aside, focused on the busy shop, and whispered to herself, "I just need to survive." For now. By the end of the first month, Neca's small wooden shop had transformed. The once quiet space now buzzed with the sound of combs, chatter, and laughter. Women waited patiently in the single plastic chair, admiring themselves in the small mirror, occasionally stepping back to appreciate her work. Neca moved quickly but carefully, her hands nimble and precise, guiding braids into neat patterns that reflected years of silent apprenticeship under Madame Clara. Her heart, however, was no longer entirely at ease. Each time a client returned earlier than expected, scratching or complaining softly, Neca felt a mix of pride and guilt. The shop was finally thriving, and her pockets were filling. But she knew the reason behind this sudden success was a secret, hidden in an unlabeled jar in her drawer. The community began noticing her success. "Neca Hair Palace is always full," neighbors would whisper. Some commented on her gentle touch, her patience, and the warm atmosphere she created. Others simply admired the crowd of customers that spilled onto the small street, proof that even a tiny salon could thrive with skill and charm. Yet no one knew that behind the smiles and compliments lay a calculated method designed to keep customers coming back, sometimes faster than their hair should have demanded. With her growing clientele, Neca began to expand her small operation. She added a second chair, borrowed another mirror from a friend, and bought additional products to meet demand. Each week she calculated her profits, sent a portion home to her mother, and tucked some aside for emergencies. The joy of providing for her family, combined with her business success, felt like the reward for years of patience and struggle. But Neca's confidence began to grow alongside her income, and with confidence came a subtle, dangerous temptation. The tiny amounts of relaxer she had first used cautiously began to seem like a tool she could tweak for faster returns. "Just a little more," she whispered to herself one evening, staring at the empty seats after a long day. "Nothing serious will happen. I am careful. I am in control." That night, as she closed the door and swept the floor, she paused to look around her shop. The mirrors reflected not only her hard work, but also the choices she was slowly making. Choices born out of necessity, but with consequences she could not yet see. Neca lay awake in her small room that night, wondering how far she could push her experiment before it crossed a line she could never return from. Her success felt intoxicating. The shop was busy, her mother smiled more often, and her brother's medicine was never late. But in the quiet moments when the street outside was still, Neca began to realize that keeping her salon alive might demand more than just talent. It might demand a price her conscience was not yet ready to pay. For weeks, Neca's salon flourished. The chairs were always full, the waiting area often crowded, and the small wooden shop seemed alive with energy she had never imagined. Her reputation as a gentle, talented stylist spread beyond her neighborhood. Women traveled from nearby streets and even distant towns just to sit in her chair. Neca felt proud, validated, and finally in control of her future. Yet, amid the bustling success, the first signs of trouble quietly crept in. Some customers began to return with subtle complaints. A scratch here, a tiny redness there, nothing severe, but enough to make Neca's heart race. She smiled gently, reassured them, and adjusted the mixture slightly less than before. The incidents were minor, and she rationalized them as normal reactions, an inevitable part of styling hair. Despite these small warnings, Neca's ambition grew faster than her caution. She began experimenting with larger amounts of the chemical mixture, thinking that more would bring faster returns. If a tiny dab brought customers back after 3 days, she reasoned, a slightly stronger application would ensure they returned even sooner. Her calculations were simple, logical in her mind: more mixture, more visits, more income. The business seemed to respond perfectly. Within days, the familiar scratching and complaints accelerated. Customers who previously returned after 3 days were now back in 2. Some even called to book urgent appointments, claiming discomfort and itching. Neca greeted each client with warmth, apologizing for their discomfort, secretly pleased that her plan was working. Her pockets filled, her shelves stayed stocked, and her mother's eyes sparkled with pride. But shadows began creeping into her success. The more she experimented, the more subtle damage she noticed. A few strands of hair broke, tiny patches looked thinner, redness appeared more often on scalps. Neca pushed these thoughts aside. "It's minor, nothing serious. Just a little discomfort," she whispered, convincing herself that survival justified the risk. The first seed of doubt grew on a rainy afternoon. A loyal customer who had always trusted Neca's hands whispered nervously, "My scalp is burning a little, should I come back?" Neca reassured her, masking the spike of panic in her chest. Inside, she realized that her actions were no longer purely about survival. The line between necessity and greed had blurred, and she was stepping into territory she could not fully control. That night, alone in her small room above the shop, Neca stared at the ceiling, the faces of satisfied yet slightly irritated customers flashing through her mind. She wondered, how much longer could she keep this secret? How far could she push her methods without causing irreversible harm? The answers eluded her, and the uneasy realization settled in. Success could come at a cost far greater than she had anticipated. As Neca's salon grew busier, not everyone inside the shop was as carefree or trusting as her other customers. Among the many women who visited, there was one quiet, observant lady named Adobe. She rarely spoke more than necessary, never lingered for gossip, and only came when someone personally recommended Neca's services. Adobe preferred to watch rather than participate, to notice details others overlooked. Adobe had her hair braided one Tuesday morning. She complimented Neca politely and left, just like any other satisfied client. But 3 days later, she returned, not in anger, not in complaint, but with discomfort. Her scalp itched intensely, and she could feel tiny stinging spots on her skin. She sat down quietly and spoke softly. "Please, check my scalp. Something isn't right." Neca, who had grown accustomed to these complaints, reached for her usual comforting words and her hands for examination. Adobe, however, was different. She watched Neca carefully, the way she moved, the way her hands lingered over her hair, and the subtle hesitation before opening the small, unlabeled container in the drawer. Something didn't feel normal to Adobe, though she kept her composure. After leaving the salon, Adobe shared her experience with her close friend, Mosi. To her surprise, Mosi revealed that she had experienced the same discomfort after visiting Neca the previous week. That moment confirmed Adobe's suspicions. "It's not random," she whispered. "Something is happening here, and I want to see it for myself." A plan began to form in Adobe's mind. She and Mosi would return together, pretending it was just a normal visit, to observe Neca quietly. They agreed to sit like ordinary clients, paying attention to every move, every container, every reaction. If anything suspicious occurred, they would take note, gather evidence, and protect themselves and others from further harm. The following Saturday, Adobe and Mosi arrived at the salon. Mosi requested a new braid style, while Adobe simply sat and observed. Neca welcomed them warmly, chatting and laughing, completely unaware that she was under scrutiny. Every small movement of Neca's hands, the way she approached her drawer, the way she reached for the unlabeled container, all of it caught Adobe's attention. Adobe remained silent, patient, and calculating. She knew that rushing to confrontation could jeopardize the opportunity to truly understand what was happening. What seemed ordinary to Neca, the casual application of her mysterious cream, was, in Adobe's eyes, the key to uncovering the truth. By the end of the session, Adobe knew without doubt that something was being hidden, and this silent vigilance would soon bring everything to light. The following week, Adobe and Mosi returned to Neca's salon, blending in with other customers. Neca welcomed them with her usual bright smile, unaware that the quiet observer in the corner was silently watching her every move. Mosi asked for a new braid style, chattering happily, while Adobe stayed calm, barely speaking, observing the process like a hawk. As Neca finished Mosi's braids, Adobe noticed the familiar routine. Neca glanced around, stepped aside, and reached for the small drawer hidden behind the counter. Her hands retrieved a tiny, unlabeled container, and she prepared to apply the mixture to Mosi's scalp without explanation. Adobe's heart beat faster. She had been waiting for this exact moment. "Stop," Adobe said calmly, standing up. The room fell silent. Neca froze, the container trembling in her hands. A nervous smile appeared, and she said, "It's just normal hair cream. Nothing harmful." Adobe stepped closer. "Why is it not labeled like the others? And why don't you use it on your own hair first?" Her tone was gentle but firm. Mosi reached out, touching the affected areas of her scalp, confirming what Adobe had suspected. "So this is what happened last week," she said quietly. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the salon changed. Other waiting customers began to murmur, their curiosity and concern growing. "What's happening?" someone asked. Another added, "Show us what's inside. Is it safe?" The small shop, once filled with the hum of chatter and hairdryers, was now tense with suspicion. Neca's palms became sweaty, and she hugged the container tightly against her chest. She tried to explain, her voice quivering. I didn't mean to harm anyone. I wanted my salon to survive. Please, I'm sorry." But her words were drowned out by the growing crowd. Customers rushed forward, peering at the container, murmuring, and some even began inspecting their hair. The pressure escalated as the noise outside grew. Someone shouted, "Call the police." Within minutes, 2 officers arrived. Neca, overwhelmed and trembling, was taken to the station. As she sat on a plastic chair, her eyes swollen from tears, Neca whispered softly, "I'm sorry. I didn't want things to end like this." The officer asked her to explain everything, from her days as an apprentice under Madame Clara to the struggles of running her own salon, the challenges with repeat customers, and the decisions she had made in desperation. Neca told her story truthfully, without hiding a single detail. The officer listened silently, taking notes, understanding the complexity of survival, ambition, and the dangerous line Neca had crossed. Outside, the crowd continued to murmur, shocked and angry, but for Neca, the weight of her actions had finally hit. At the police station, Neca sat quietly, her head bowed and hands trembling. The fluorescent lights above flickered slightly, casting long shadows across the stockroom. She didn't argue, didn't cry out, and didn't try to defend her actions. All she could do was whisper, "I'm sorry. I didn't want this to happen." The officer on duty, a tall man with a calm but stern demeanor, finally spoke. "Neca, I understand you wanted to keep your salon alive, but your method, this shortcut you took, was wrong. It endangered people. Business growth cannot come at the cost of harming others." Neca's chest tightened. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. She had never thought her desperate choice would lead to this kind of public shame and danger. Later that evening, her mother arrived at the station, clutching her handbag and her shawl tightly around her shoulders. She rushed to Neca's side, her voice trembling. "Neca, why didn't you tell me? We could have found another way." I would have helped. Neca tried to speak, but the words got stuck in her throat. She could only weep, wishing she could rewind time and undo the decisions that had shattered her reputation and hurt the people who had trusted her. After hours of pleading and discussions, the police agreed to let Neca stay in a holding room, separate from the main cell, pending settlement with the victims. Community elders also intervened, promising to mediate and ensure that the situation could be resolved without formal court trials if all parties agreed. It was a small relief, but the shame, fear, and heartbreak weighed heavily on her. The biggest surprise came the following morning when Auntie Rita, her mentor and wise confidant from the market, walked into the station. Rita looked older, more solemn, but her eyes carried the same piercing clarity. Neca rushed toward her, relief and guilt tangled together. Auntie Rita, I didn't want to hurt anyone. I only wanted my salon to survive. Rita held Neca's gaze firmly. Neca, when I told you that repeat customers were the secret, I meant build trust, nurture relationships, treat people well. I never meant shortcuts that could harm them. Your actions may have brought you temporary success, but they also brought danger to them, to you, and to your dreams. The weight of Rita's words hit Neca like a physical blow. She realized in that moment that she had misunderstood the very wisdom that was supposed to guide her. Success without patience, without honesty, had become poison. Tears rolled freely down her cheeks as Rita added softly, Your talent is genuine, Neca, but talent without patience can destroy everything. Do not forget this lesson. For the first time in days, Neca truly understood the cost of greed and the value of integrity. She whispered, barely audible, I understand now. I'm sorry. After the harsh lessons of the police station, Neca returned home, her heart heavy with guilt and shame. The streets seemed quieter than usual, as if the entire neighborhood was aware of her fall from grace. Her small wooden shop, once a beacon of hope and pride, now stood like a reminder of mistakes too costly to ignore. The signboard she had worked so hard to create seemed to mock her from the dusty entrance. For almost a week, Neca could not bring herself to reopen the salon. She spent her days sweeping her small apartment, praying, crying, and reflecting on every decision that had led her here. Each memory of her struggling years under Madame Clara, every sleepless night worrying about her family, and every compromise she had made for the sake of survival, now mingled with the fresh weight of her mistakes. One morning, after a particularly long night of thinking, Neca sat on the dusty floor of her salon. She stared at the empty chairs, the mirrors reflecting her weary face. Her hands, once nimble and proud, now felt small and powerless. She took a deep breath and whispered to herself, If I give up now, I'll lose everything. Not just the salon, but my integrity and my dreams. The words were quiet, but they carried a spark of determination that had survived even in her darkest moments. With a heavy but resolute heart, Neca began the first steps of rebuilding. She cleaned the chairs, wiped down the mirrors until they gleamed, swept the floor, and threw away every container that had no label. Every bottle that had once held harmful mixtures was gone, replaced with fresh, honest products. She set a small note inside the drawer, a personal promise to herself. No shortcuts. No tricks. Patience, honesty, and care. The first day she reopened, people passed by without entering. Some stared, whispering to each other. Some shook their heads, doubt lingering in their eyes. Neca felt the sting of judgment but didn't flinch. She reminded herself that rebuilding trust was a slow process. She welcomed her first customer carefully, treating her hair with patience and sincerity, showing the care that had originally won her praise. By the end of the day, one woman smiled gently as she left, saying, I believe everybody deserves another chance. Can you make my hair? Neca nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. That small gesture of trust, simple as it seemed, felt like the first brick in rebuilding not just her salon, but her reputation and her spirit. It was not fast. It was not easy. But for Neca, every careful braid, every honest conversation, and every patient customer became a step on the long road to redemption. Slowly, she began to understand the real meaning of Auntie Rita's words. Trust, honesty, and care would always last longer than shortcuts and tricks. Neca woke up that morning with a mix of nervousness and hope. The week had passed since she quietly reopened her salon, and though she had only served a handful of customers, The experience had reminded her of why she loved styling hair in the first place. She didn't rush. She didn't try to impress anyone with shortcuts or gimmicks. Every braid, every cornrow, every twist was done with care, precision, and honesty. The streets outside her small wooden shop were busy as usual, with people rushing to their jobs, vendors calling for buyers, and children playing near the roadside. Neca arranged her products neatly on the shelf, ensuring that everything was clean and properly labeled. She double-checked her mirrors and chairs, remembering how important it was to make her salon inviting, even if it was small. This time, every detail mattered, not for appearance alone, but as part of rebuilding trust. Around mid-morning, the bell on the shop door rang gently. A woman stepped inside, hesitant but polite. Neca looked up and offered her a warm smile. "Good morning. How can I help you today?" The woman's name was Grace, a former customer who had once praised Neca's talent but had left when she felt unsure about the salon's safety after hearing rumors. I want to try your hair again," Grace said softly, glancing at the chairs and mirrors with a careful eye. "But I want it done slowly, carefully." Neca nodded, her hand steady. "Of course. Take a seat, and I promise to take care of your hair." For the next few hours, Neca worked patiently, checking and rechecking each section of hair, applying only safe, gentle products. She explained every step to Grace, making sure she was comfortable. Grace relaxed, chatting occasionally, and even complimented Neca on how clean and professional the salon now felt. When she left, she smiled warmly. "Thank you, Neca. I trust you again." One by one, the trickle of customers began to return. They came slowly, at first neighbors, friends, and church members, but the energy in the salon changed. The sound of laughter, conversation, and gentle hair styling returned. Neca still felt the weight of her past mistakes, but each honest interaction, each carefully done hairstyle, helped lift it. By the end of the week, Neca realized something important. Trust, once broken, cannot be rushed. It grows slowly, nurtured by honesty, patience, and genuine care. And as her customers began to return, not because of tricks or shortcuts, but because of real skill and respect, Neca finally felt the beginnings of peace in her heart. She whispered to herself, "Slow success. Slow success is better than fast regret." And for the first time in months, she truly believed it. Days passed, and Neca's quiet, honest approach began to bear fruit. She no longer worried about shortcuts or the rush for immediate profit. Each morning she arrived early at the salon, cleaned every corner, arranged her tools neatly, and prepared mentally to give her best. Her customers noticed the difference. It wasn't just her skill that impressed them, it was the care and attention she now gave to each person, treating them with respect and patience. It started slowly. A few familiar faces returned, women who had once been regulars but had stopped visiting after the chaos with the unlabeled cream. They came cautiously, testing the waters, watching her actions, asking questions about the products and processes. Neca answered honestly, explaining how each product worked, showing the containers, and ensuring no hidden mixtures were applied. Her sincerity began to melt the skepticism they carried. One of the first to return was Mosi, the friend of Adobe, the quiet observer who had first noticed Neca's greed. Mosi came quietly, sat down, and said simply, "I want to see if I can trust you again." Neca's hands trembled slightly, but she smiled warmly and promised to do her best. She worked carefully, applying only safe products, and meticulously braided Mosi's hair. When Mosi stood to leave, she ran her fingers gently over her scalp, smiling. "I can feel the difference," she said softly. "Thank you for being honest." Word began to spread. People saw that Neca's salon, though small, had regained a sense of professionalism. Her neighbors talked about the change. Those who had once whispered rumors about shortcuts now spoke of her patience, skill, and care. Slowly her clientele started growing again, not by trickery, but through trust rebuilt. Each returning customer brought new energy into the salon. Laughter returned, along with lively conversations and the comforting hum of hairdryers. Neca began to realize that true success was not measured by immediate money or crowded days, but by the trust and loyalty of those who walked through her doors. She recorded notes about each client, their preferred styles, sensitivities, and requests. Slowly she was creating a community around her salon, one built on honesty and care. Even though growth was slow, it was steady. Each returning client gave her hope. Each honest braid reminded her that she could rebuild her dream without harming anyone. Neca finally understood what Auntie Rita had meant. Relationships, respect, and trust were the real keys to repeat customers, not shortcuts that brought fast money but destroyed reputations. By the end of the month, her small salon was alive again. Not bustling like before the scandal, but stable. Neca felt a sense of quiet satisfaction as she looked around, seeing her work displayed honestly, her customers happy, and her conscience clear. She whispered softly, slow and steady, "This is how real success is built." The days that followed were a test of patience, humility, and dedication. Neca had learned the hard way that shortcuts could destroy not only her business, but also her conscience and the trust of the people she served. Now, every decision she made was guided by honesty and care. Each morning, she cleaned her small salon meticulously, set out her tools, and greeted every client with a genuine smile. The nervous tension that once shadowed her movements was gone. Customers returned slowly but surely. They arrived cautiously, often asking questions about products and procedures, testing the waters to see if the salon was truly safe. Neca answered each query with transparency, demonstrating her commitment to safety and quality. She learned to listen more than she spoke, to observe quietly, and to understand each client's needs. Word of mouth, fueled by trust rather than shortcuts, began to spread. One rainy afternoon, a woman stepped inside quietly. She had heard about Neca's past troubles, but believed that everyone deserved a second chance. Neca recognized a cautious hope in her eyes. "I believe everybody deserves another chance," the woman said softly. Neca nodded, feeling a wave of gratitude and relief. That moment marked a turning point. It was no longer about money, fast returns, or tricks. It was about rebuilding, brick by brick, with patience and integrity. Slowly, the salon regained its life. Though not as crowded as during its peak of greed-driven success, it was sustainable. Loyal customers returned regularly, appreciating the care and honesty in every service. New clients arrived, drawn by the reputation for safe and professional hair care. Neca even started offering workshops for young apprentices, teaching them the skills she had acquired honestly and the lessons she had learned the hard way. Neca often thought about Auntie Rita's words, the silent observation of adobe, and the lessons from her mother and family. She realized that success built on shortcuts might feel sweet initially, but it ultimately brought pain and regret. Real success was slower, quieter, and steadier, but it lasted. It built trust, relationships, and peace of mind. By the end of the year, Neca's small salon had grown into a modest but respected business. She could provide for her family, pay her rent without fear, and sleep at night with a clear conscience. The lessons of greed, shortcuts, and honesty remained etched in her heart. She whispered to herself every morning, "Slow success with honesty is better than fast success with regret." Neca's journey was complete not through shortcuts, not through greed, but through patience, care, and the courage to rebuild with integrity. Her talent had finally found its true path, and this time it would not destroy her.
Subscribe for more content.